Justin Geis is a rare talent in the world of 3D modeling, a jack of all trades who seems to have mastered them all. As the creator of the popular SketchUp Essentials YouTube channel with over 500,000 subscribers, Justin has become a trusted source for SketchUp enthusiasts around the globe. On his channel, Justin dives into SketchUp extensions, shares invaluable tips and tricks, and reviews the latest 3D tools, keeping his audience on the cutting edge. You should subscribe. In this video, we'll join Justin live at the 2024 SketchUp 3D Summit, where he delivered his fan favorite Extension Madness presentation. This is a must watch for anyone looking to expand their SketchUp expertise with the latest and greatest tools. This video is sponsored by SmartBuild, a complete building design system for post frame and stud frame structures. Their new SKP export dovetails perfectly with my Conduct Tools extension. More about that later. For now, let's hear what Justin has to say.
What's up, guys? I'm sorry, I had to do it. Okay, yeah, that needs to be a t-shirt. You are correct. Okay, so always excited to talk about this topic. You know, there's a lot of things that I could talk about with SketchUp, but I always get the most fired up about extensions just because there's so much they can do for a little bit of everything, honestly. And one great example of that is all of the backgrounds that you see, I remade them using Stable Diffusion, which is an extension for SketchUp, while we were sitting here this week, which is great because I'm not good at this kind of thing. And so what I wanted to talk about today is we'll start off and we'll just kind of go through, you guys all know who I am, right? Like, you've seen the channel. Has anyone not watched a video on my YouTube channel? Great, okay, cool. Yeah. Sorry. Yes! It is wonderful to have you here. Okay, so for you, hi, I'm Justin. I have a YouTube channel called the SketchUp Essentials. Yeah, I know. Yeah. So unfortunately, I do have to highlight that I am still the second biggest SketchUp YouTube channel. I have not figured out how to catch SketchUp, and now they're kind of pulling away from me. So if you could get all your friends to subscribe, that would be fantastic. But yes, all right. But I don't think we're going to get there. But I love talking about SketchUp in general, obviously. So first thing, when I give presentations, I'm not a massive fan of trying to get you to follow along in this setting, just because it's really hard to do, especially like loading extensions, all of that. So links to everything that I talk about is at the SketchUpEssentials.com/SketchUp Summit. I can try to get them in the folder as well. But what you're going to find in there, in addition to this presentation, is basically an Excel file with links to every extension that I talk about, how much they're going to cost, if they have a cost, a description of what they do, links to tutorials on how to use them. So if you see something you like, you can go learn how to use it after the fact. If you have any questions, shoot me an email, justin@thesketchupessentials.com. So anytime I give this presentation, because I love giving this presentation, I want you to understand what's possible with extensions, and I want you to be able to go find those things that are going to help you and pursue them after the presentation. So if there's one thing I talk about that you didn't know about that makes your life better, then that's the point of this whole thing. So kind of a two-part thing. I'm going to do like a fast run-through of extensions in the first hour or so, and then I'm going to get into some more in-depth examples. But again, I really like staying in SketchUp as much as I can. Try to get out of the PowerPoint as fast as I can. What are extensions and why do you need them? Or better question, who in here is not using at least one SketchUp extension right now? Okay, cool. You will. Extensions are basically Ruby scripts files that you install in SketchUp that do different things. So there are extensions for everything from making the way that you select things more efficient to doing things like creating full cities. So like, for example, this is Denver, using an extension called Placemaker. I've talked with a couple people in here about Placemaker, I think. One of the cool things about Placemaker is they also just added the ability to download Google Earth imagery into your SketchUp models, which is cool and also not cool, because when you zoom in, you're like, oh, Google Earth imagery isn't that great. But you can bring in an entire city for context, and then you could cut out a part of the city and then put your project in. So it automates that process, basically. So same thing with something like this, where I was going to add a second image here and crash SketchUp trying to do it. But so this is basically taking topography and then using an extension to slice it and create individual slices of that area, which you could then export to a CNC router or something like that. That would take forever to do manually. There's an extension you can use to automate that. So there's also extensions for other things. There, okay. So this was done in an extension called Animator, which basically allows you to take that base functionality of SketchUp where you can animate your camera, actually animate geometry moving around. So you can use it to animate doors and windows opening, all the way up to exploded views, cars with turning wheels, all sorts of different stuff. You cannot do something like that in the base version of SketchUp. It's just not a possibility. So yeah, basically extensions do more things than the base version of SketchUp can do, and I am a huge fan. So I already asked this question, so I'll more just show off this awesome slide real quick. And anyone that was at Basecamp 2022 knows that these are based on the slides from Basecamp 2022. I just told Stable Diffusion to change them a little bit. Common objection, kind of like what you talked about. I don't want to use extensions yet because it's going to force me to learn the native tools better. I hear that a lot. You know, you need to learn how to do this in the regular version of SketchUp. And I like this analogy. So being from, you know, a farm, if you're going to try to do something like this, which tool do you want to use? Like you are welcome to learn how to dig that with a shovel, but it's going to take you a long time. So it's worth knowing what other tools are out there, because some tools are better for jobs than others, and they're not all built into SketchUp. I am all about getting faster in SketchUp and being more efficient in SketchUp. And extensions are one way that you can get faster and more efficient. So where to get extensions? I'm going to kind of blow through this because it seems like a lot of people here are pretty well versed in this, but the number one place is a SketchUp extension warehouse. It's built into the Pro version of SketchUp. By the way, extensions do not work on the web version or the iPad version, at least as of right now. And I don't think there's anyone here from SketchUp that I can complain to about that. So I should have presented yesterday. When you go into the extension warehouse, every extension is going to have an information page on it that's going to give you information about the extension. So it's going to have developer name, name of extension, some stuff over here about compatibility is kind of important, but not always important. So some extensions are not officially updated for the newest versions of SketchUp, but they work in the newest version. But it's usually worth checking to see, like, you're good to go if it says it has a SketchUp compatibility of 2024 and you're using 2024. If not, usually I recommend still trying to install it and then just uninstalling it if it doesn't work. But it is worth looking at. Second place to get extensions is the SketchUcation extension warehouse. So this is a second extension warehouse not officially supported by SketchUp. I don't know if it has more extensions, but it does have different extensions. So like, for example, Fredo 6's extensions are only in the SketchUcation extension warehouse, not the SketchUp extension warehouse. So for most users, I recommend you be able to log in and use both. Again, SketchUcation, those extensions are going to have an information page. It's going to be very similar. This more info button on SketchUcation is really important. Usually it'll link to either a forum post or an information page. It'll give you more information. Sometimes there's like instructions, or sometimes there's an actual forum post put up by the developer. So if you have any issues with it, you can actually leave a comment in the thread, and a lot of the time they'll actually see it. So like Fredo sees them, TIG sees them. Some of the others do as well. So I know Yanni's in the forum all the time, so he's got a Flex Tools thread on the SketchUp forum. So SketchUcation also has an extension that you install in SketchUp that gives you access to their store directly inside of the SketchUp workspace. So you can actually install SketchUcation extensions by clicking the little install button here from directly inside of SketchUp, instead of you having to download a Ruby script file and install it through the extension manager. Some extensions, usually kind of the bigger, more robust ones, so like Placemaker, Flex Tools, scatter. Sometimes you're going to download those from a third-party website. So like Flex Tools is hosted on the Flex Tools website. So you end up purchasing a license and then they'll get you a link and you download it and you install it that way, right? You've got to go through the Flex Tools website to do that. So a lot of the time the SketchUp extension warehouse page will just have a go to website or something button that'll take you to find information. So they're listed in that warehouse, but you're going to have to get them separately. Okay, so let's get out of PowerPoint and into SketchUp. So what kind of extensions are there? Let's go through some of them. And I'm going to go really fast. And again, these are all linked, so shouldn't have any issues figuring out where to find these kind of thing. Okay, so first off, we do have extensions for just kind of general functions. And again, a bunch of these, or some of these, I'm going to try to get into in a little more depth in like the second half of this. But you've got extensions like Sketch Plus. So hold on a second. The hardest part of this presentation is loading and unloading the extensions that you need to do all of these demos. So let's see, we got Sketch Plus. Okay, so Sketch Plus is an extension that basically has a ton of tools that aren't natively built into SketchUp, but it's got some interesting things in it like, let's see, components. It's got things like random rotation and scale. Sketch Plus is interesting in the sense that, so it can randomly scale objects, it can randomly rotate objects. It's also got a tool built in for doing component replacement. So like, for example, if I take replace component here, it'll swap out components. There we go. So you could have a list of different components in here and just swap them out really quickly using that tool. Sketch Plus, some of those are out there. Some of the tools that are built into Sketch Plus are out there for free as well. And I guess that's one thing that's worth mentioning. So some extensions are paid, some extensions are free. Whether they're paid or not isn't usually a reflection of if they're valuable. But I do get a lot of comments online about, well, why would I pay for an extension? This should be free. In my opinion, a developer's time is valuable. If they make it available for free, that's great. But think about your hourly rate and the amount of time that an extension would save you, right? So say your hourly rate, and I'm just making up a number, is $50. And there's an extension that's $40. It's going to save you 100 hours in a year. Come on. You know, I mean, it's 100% worth it to save 100 hours at $40. Like that's a great trade-off. So I always kind of do that like cost-benefit analysis in my head of like how valuable is this? How much time is it going to save you? So let's see. So there are tools out there for doing things like aligning objects and spacing objects. So like Curic Align is a tool that's designed to help you align objects. So it'll pick a line, you can select it, and it'll take all of those objects and it'll align them along a certain point. So you can do it that way, you can align them vertically. So it's really good for aligning things. He also has a tool for spacing objects. So you can take all of those objects, you can space them along the line, and you can type in a value. So say you wanted these to be spaced at 5 feet on center or 10 feet on center. That tool is going to allow you to take those objects and set the spacing between the different objects. Path Copy has been around forever. It's a free extension in the SketchUp extension warehouse. It's from Smustard. But basically, it's a tool where you pick a path. You can copy objects along a path, and you can set the spacing. So if I run it again, there it is. And basically what that does is that spaces the objects, or it places them based on where the axis location of the object is along the path. So you can adjust where the axis is in the object to adjust how it gets placed. 3D text editor is a tool everyone should have. So I don't know if you've used the normal text editor, but if you type in 3D text, place it, It's going to be way too small. That's okay. You're stuck. All right, you can't right click on it. You can't edit it. So 3D Text Editor is a tool from TomTom that allows you to put editable 3D text in here. So you can adjust it. There. Yep. But the coolest thing about that one is you can right click on it, you can go back and you can edit it. So way better just for that one function. It's free. Everyone should have it. Okay, so Selection Toys is a tool from TomTom that basically gives you a number of tools for sorting through different selections. So if you look at this, for example, notice how some of these are groups, some of these are components, some of them should be components. There we go. That's a component right there. All right, so if I was to select all of those, what Selection Toys does is it gives you a way to filter. So you can do select only edges, you can do select only groups. So say I wanted to pick up the ones that were components, I could do select only components. It also allows you to do really interesting things with, like, if you wanted to select the border edges of a selection, like this. You can take away everything but the border edges. You could also select the softened edges that are in here. So if you just wanted to pick those up, and I wonder, yeah, it mostly works. So if I was to delete most of those out, not all of them because these are not quads, but I could use this to get rid of a lot of the diagonals that are in there. So if you wanted to set this up for like Lattice Maker to make windows or something, you could use it to get rid of some of that hidden geometry. So again, free extension from TomTom. I let my license on this one lapse, but Eneroth Visual Merge is basically a tool that if you've ever modeled a roof, floor, a wall, and you get this kind of like line edge in here, you can come in here and like manually hide them. This tool automatically hides the edges between different points like that, so you can't see them anymore. They still exist, they're just hidden now. Drop GC, which we'll talk about a little bit later. So if you've got a bunch of trees or something like that, a lot of the time it's easier to kind of set the layout of those on a flat plane like this. And then what it'll do is it'll look down below your object and it'll find a plane that's under the object. It'll find the intersection point, it'll move the object down to align with that surface. Another free extension. Selection memory, everyone should have selection memory installed. So if you have ever gone through and you've messed around with picking up, you know, some kind of a complex selection, you're going, and then oops, you lose it all. What selection memory does is it will save your previous selection. So I actually have it tied to a keyboard shortcut. But if I type the D key on my keyboard, it saves the last 5 selections that you had. And so if you accidentally click off of something, which I do all the time, that'll save that. Theoretically, you can go in and adjust that. If you go into the text of the script file, and I've not done this, but it's not supposed to be super hard, you can change the number of selections it'll save. So you can tell it to save 10 or 15 selections. You don't necessarily want like 1,000,000 in there because that's just more stuff that SketchUp has to store. But still a really great extension. I think everyone should have that one. So another one, and I'll talk a little bit more about this a little later, but there's an older tool called SketchUV, which is a UV mapping tool. It's got a smart path selection tool, which is basically designed to help you pick up complex selections using kind of an algorithm to figure out the shortest point. And then you can hit the enter key to finalize it. It's really great for picking up the perimeters of holes in Sandbox Tools, spaces, things like that. That tool is also built into Profile Builder, and I think it works a little better on the Profile Builder version because SketchUV is really old. So if you have Profile Builder, use the Path Select tool from that. I use it on my terrains and stuff all the time. Let's see, so Memory Copy is a tool that basically takes any changes that were made between one object and another object and it repeats them. So it adds a little toolbar in here, and these are both components. Well, if I click on Play It Again, and then click on this object, what it's going to do is it's going to figure out the movement and the rotation between these two objects, and it'll repeat it. So really good if you want to do like spiraling stairs, that kind of thing. All right. Solid Inspector. If you've ever worked with solids, you know it is like painful. So Solid Inspector is a tool that basically inspects your model and tries to figure out what's keeping it from being solid. So in this case, right, this has an internal face in it. You can kind of see it if I turn on X-ray mode. So it's got an internal face, and then it's got 3 holes in it. Sometimes it'll fix the holes, sometimes it won't. So sometimes you have to go back in and automatically fix them. But like, for example, if I come in here and trace over these, because it showed me where they were. Turn X-ray on. So if I fix all that, now it's a solid. So it helps you track down all of those issues. Material Replacer, another one I think everyone should have. I absolutely love Material Replacer. It is a tool from TomTom. It's free. And basically what it does is it lets you pick a material in your model. So say I wanted to replace this material. You can click on it, then you can find a different material, and it'll replace that material everywhere in the model. I use this all the time. The only thing to kind of be aware of with that is literally it's everywhere in the model. Like anywhere that material was, it's replaced it with this wood. So you got to be a little bit careful with it that you're not accidentally removing something you don't want, but huge time saver.
Hey Justin, real quick.
Yeah.
Have you ever had a problem where a material like that gets in the inside face and you can't figure out where it's at? And how do you fix that with this? Can you do it with this?
You can't do it with this, but let me see. No, it's not this one. I think TIG might have a tool. There's a tool where you can remove materials from the backside of faces. I think it might be a TIG tool in SketchUcation. So you can run it and it'll go through and it'll find all of those materials that are on the backsides of faces and just remove them. I think it's a TIG tool. I'd have to go look. Oh, by the way, side note, let's see. Sorry, I'm wandering a little bit. I opened SketchUcation today. So somebody was saying they were having an issue with windows showing up off their screen. So, okay. So I have not tested this in 2024, but this is in the SketchUcation plugin store. And what it's supposed to do is it is supposed to try to cascade all of your open windows in your main monitor. So it might be able to bring all of those menu bars that are off your screen and put them on your main bar. So it's worth trying. Haven't tested it yet, but.
I have a small script that you kind of paste into the Ruby console that might also do this.
Even better. It sounds like I need to get a script file from Yanni and make a YouTube video about it. So is what it sounds like. Okay, so we are going to get more into this one in a minute. I actually don't know why I have this one in general functions, but it's fun, so that's fine. So Extrusion Tools is a tool set from TIG. It is free in SketchUcation, and it's basically designed to let you use edges to create complex shapes. So like for example, extrude edges by rails. You pick a profile, you pick 2 paths, and then you pick a final profile, and it will basically extrude that curve and follow the rails. No, I don't need to reverse the yes, I do need to do this. Yes, I want these to be quad faces. No, I don't want to do that. So creates a surface in here. My favorite tool in this one is the extrude edges by vector to object. So what you do, you pick up a bunch of edges, you extrude them, and you give them a direction. It's going to find an object, and it's going to create those based on the intersection points. You see how there's little red points in here? And this computer is a little funky. It's been doing this a bunch lately. It's not just a SketchUp thing. Yeah, there we go. No, and we're good. So basically extruded those objects. I've got an example later. I'll show you where it works horizontally as well as vertically. So, okay, so general functions. You can also use extensions to do more advanced things. And we're going to talk about this a little bit later, but Fredo 6 has a bunch of really awesome tools, which I think everyone should have. What is it? Extension Madness 2, apply. We'll talk about this little trick later too. Don't let me forget. Okay, so Tools on Surface is a tool that's specifically designed to help you draw on more complex surfaces. This is a part of a paid package of extensions, or you can get it on your own, on its own. But basically, you can pick it and you can use it to draw on surfaces. One function I really like with this is the ability to do an offset of a three-dimensional surface like this. And you can do this either as a guide or as actual geometry. So, very cool. All right, so Curviloft. So if you ever create like complex shapes, and you're doing it using edges and you need to do like skinning or something like that, Curviloft is basically a tool that allows you to loft between edges and it'll create surfaces. So like for example, I can create a skin right here across this object. You can also pick closed ends. So like if I pick these, there's a skinning function that will generate a skin across the surface like that. Really cool practical application for that we're going to talk about a little bit later. But there are multiple different extensions for creating different kinds of skins across surfaces. So another one for all of my landscape architects, people that do site work, is Soap, Skin, and Bubble. Soap, Skin, and Bubble is fantastic because what it'll do is it'll let you pick up closed edges in a shape. So like this. And it'll generate a skin. Okay. Within the skin, you can either, so I've seen people use this to patch sites. Daniel taught me how to do that. That's like the coolest thing you can do with this, is you can pick up all the edges around something and it'll actually create a skin in here. But this soap skin, and it's a little bit funky. Hold on. -10. Oh yeah, there it goes. This is why I do things on YouTube. I can just cut out all of this. Okay. Doesn't want to do it. Okay, we're going to try again. There we go. So you can apply different pressure ratios. And you don't want to go too crazy or you get that result that I saw before, but you can adjust like how inflated the bubble that it creates around that surface is. So you can also use that to kind of adjust the slope of surfaces that are created when you're fixing surfaces. Okay, joint push-pull. So who has gotten this message before? Cannot. I don't know where the message is, but cannot push-pull curved or smooth surfaces. That's because in SketchUp, a curved surface is actually made up of multiple surfaces. So SketchUp doesn't know how to do that. But with joint push-pull can push-pull multiple surfaces and curved surfaces. So great for recesses, things like that. You can also use it to push-pull multiple faces at once. So stand by. There it is. And it's all kind of adjustable. I'd have to play with this a little more. The fact that I picked this face up means that it's not doing anything. It's not 100% sure what to do with that, but you get the idea. There's also tools for doing like vector push-pull. So you can take a surface, push pull it in a direction like that. And it'll push pull all of them in a singular direction and then create a flat surface. So pretty slick. Slicer we talked about. I'm not going to run this in front of the group because it will either take a long time or crash SketchUp. But basically it'll take a solid object. So you know how we push pulled that face down just before with joint push pull. So if you do that with a terrain and you make it a solid object, then it can come in here and it can create slices. And you can adjust and edit the thickness of the slices. There's actually a function for this one where it'll lay the different parts and pieces down so that you can actually export them to a CNC router. So if you want to make this out of wood, you could. So it's pretty slick.
SmartBuild is a complete building design system for post frame and stud frame structure. It's web-based, so it's quick and easy. Anyone can use this design software. Users are guided through simple prompts for designing any custom structure. As each new variable is entered, a real-time 3D model shows exactly what the building will look like. While you are busy designing, SmartBuild is busy automatically updating the framing, sheathing and trim cut lists, material lists, pricing, and drawings with every iteration. Now you know I want this model in SketchUp so I can further the design with lights, furniture, and materials, and ultimately produce drawings within my graphic standards. While SmartBuild has had an SKP export for some time, over the past year, I've been working with the team to tune their tags and refine their model organization on export. The new SketchUp export utilizes my tags and methodology for model organization, ensuring seamless integration with my Condoc Tools extension in SketchUp Pro. And what does that get you? Professional drawings with the least amount of clicks possible. Check out the link in the description to learn more.
So there's multiple different options now for rounding and beveling edges. So Fredo Corner is one that's kind of a standalone. Round Corner is his older one, and it's contained in his $40 collection of extensions, which we'll talk about. This one kind of stands on its own, but basically this is a tool for rounding and beveling edges. So you come in here, you can bevel edges off. I could pick this one. You can also do just regular bevels, but this offset, for example, I think I can actually drag it too, but you can use it to round off and bevel edges between different shapes. Again,
push-pull will work on that geometry that's made.
So joint
That first one you did there.
over here.
Yeah.
It could. You might get some kind of funky results in there. Theoretically, yes, but actually, you know what? No, I'm not going to get distracted.
Sorry.
No.
I'll take it up later.
Yeah, sounds good. If you can't tell, I like talking about extensions. Yeah, weird. I cannot for the life, there's still no one here from SketchUp I can complain to. I cannot for the life of me figure out why there's not a bevel tool built into SketchUp. Like, I do not understand. So let's all send a letter or something. So what?
This is all being recorded. We can find that out.
Perfect, yeah. That's fine. Yeah. I'm pretty sure it's not the first time they've heard it. So, okay, so Fredo Scale is a tool that has a bunch of different scaling options in here. I'm going to talk about some of these later, actually, so I'm going to move along because I'm going really slow. But one thing that I really like about Fredo Scale is it's got this box stretching option, which I think John might have talked about. But basically what it is instead of you using the regular scale tool, like if I scaled this and it distorts everything, right? So what box stretching is going to do is it's going to let you pick a point. So in this case, we'll drag this over and you can stretch based on that point. There's actually a function in here if you click on, I think it's from opposite point. No, not from, there we go, from center. It'll actually mirror it. This one's a little funky because of the nesting in the group, but you can set it up where it'll push-pull from multiple different sides at once. TrueBend is a free bending extension from TomTom. There's actually multiple different bending extensions. We're going to talk about them a little bit later. But what it does is it takes your object and it allows you to bend it. It'll slice your geometry and you can use it to do things like bending things in a circle, bending things in a half circle. So really good for like spiral staircases, things like that. Save before you use that one. I've had some crashes trying to use it. So, Helix along curve, if you ever need to create a helical shape. Whoops, lost my large tool set. So basically what this one does is it allows you to enter a bunch of information about a radius, click on OK, and it'll create a helix, so a spinning shape. You can set it to create a helix with a wide on one end and a narrow on the other end, or you can make it the same width all the way across and just have it be a normal helix. So should work along most curves. So even if this is curving, should still create a helix. All right, Flowify I'm going to talk about a little bit more later. I love Flowify because basically what it does is it allows you to take an object, put it on a base surface, and then bend it along a target surface. So we'll talk a little bit more about the setup. Hopefully, whoops, I'm going to want both of those extensions, Flowify, Flowify. I'll take those and it'll bend them along the surface right there. So usually you're going to want to use that in conjunction with your soften edges tool, like this, so that you don't get all those nasty edges. But we'll talk about the setup. It's a little finicky when you're trying to set it up, but it does cool stuff. So if you do any kind of like quad modeling or subdivision modeling, I feel like probably not for most of the people in this room, because that's a little bit more of a, I don't want to say VFX, but we just don't create organic shapes that much for what most of us are doing. But these are both tools from TomTom. And basically what this one does is it's a little bit more, wow, I picked the wrong, there we go. So basically what Vertex Tools does is it's a tool for vertex editing a shape. So if I pick up the shape, I can set like a soft select radius like this, so say 20 feet right here. It's a lot like Sandbox Tools and the way that you use the smooth tool to move things up and down, only this one is more robust. So if you do vertex work, I like Vertex Tools actually a lot better than Sandbox Tools for doing this. It does have a cost associated with it. It's like $20 or $40 or something like that. Quad face tools. So if you do any kind of quad modeling, and again, I don't feel like there's a ton of quad modeling users here, but if you do quad modeling at all, this is really good for adding things like edge loops on quads. So if you have like multiple spaces in here and you want to add edge loops, or you want to like expand your selection in here based on quads, you can do that with this tool. Again, I think it's a little niche for SketchUp users. I think a lot of those users go in more of a Blender direction, but it's still a very powerful tool set. Path select we already talked about. Selection memory we already talked about. Thru Paint. So I have a whole thing later on about materials, which I'm realizing I'm not going to get through everything I've prepared, but that's okay. But Thru Paint is a tool from Fredo 6 that's basically designed to help you fix and adjust your textures. So when I pop this open, it's basically a tool that allows you to select a texture and it maps that texture. So there's multiple different ways that you can map. So like this, like this. You can use it to move the texture along the face. You can also use it to scale textures live. Pipe along path and lines to tubes. These are both tools that are designed to create tubes in your SketchUp models. So pipe along path is a tool from TIG that basically lets you, let's make this a little bit bigger. So 12 inches right here. It basically creates a tube along a path. So pipe along path is probably the better tool for a singular path like this one. If you need to create multiple different edges that go to tubes, you're going to want to use lines to tubes. And this is basically going to, let's make this a little bit bigger as well, maybe 24 inches. But it'll go through and it'll add tubes on every single line that you select. The problem with doing it that way is you do, because it basically picks up a segment, right, and then creates a tube along it, and each one of those has a segment. So if you can use pipe along path, that's going to give you a smoother result.
Do those end up as solids or no?
That's a good question. I don't think so, because it creates them as individual things. Now, there might be an option in there, though. Stand by. You can set it so each tube is a group. So technically each tube would be a solid, but I don't think that quite gets you what you're looking for. Yeah.
What if you welded it?
Well, you're still gonna, so you're gonna have internal faces here if you welded them all together. So yeah, you could. You're starting to go down a rabbit hole of pain that I don't know that I would necessarily want to, but it's a possibility. Okay. Yeah, no, I am on board. I'll just show a quick example and then we'll move on. Profile Builder, super cool. He's going to talk about it more later, but basically it builds smart assemblies. Again, this is a my computer thing, not a SketchUp thing, because this happens with other things too. It just like freezes up. But basically Profile Builder allows you to either create profiles or smart assemblies. So it automatically creates the assemblies, fills in things like supports, other things like that. So pretty slick. Tune in later. So we've talked a lot about different workflows for creating buildings. So PlusSpec is another example of a software that you can use to do that. It's trying to more mirror the BIM functionality that you see in like a Revit or something like that. I would say whatever you decide to use, whether you go down the Nick Sonder route, whether you go down the Condoc route, whether you go down the PlusSpec route, you've got to work within the confines of the system. So if you want to use PlusSpec, it's a great tool, but you got to work with PlusSpec in the way that it does things. If you want to use Condoc, you need to set yourself up for Condoc. So I think they all have benefits, but you know, I don't think you're going to be combining PlusSpec, Condoc. You might take some of Nick's stuff because it's not super plug-in heavy, but generally it's a pick one, learn it, and go down that path type thing. We'll talk more about Vali architecture a little bit later, but basically Instant Architecture is a collection of extensions that do everything from creating windows to creating doors. He's got a tool that creates cladding. He's got a tool for grading. He's got a bunch of stuff in his extensions. I think to get all of them, it's like $120 a year. So it's like $10 a month or something like that. So I really like what these do. They do have kind of an older interface to them a little bit. So it can be a little bit confusing to figure out, but he has the most examples of different kinds of railings, kinds of windows. I'll pop them up a little bit later. He has a ton of different styles of things built in, and it's similar to what we saw with Profile Builder, like select edges and generate rail type things. We'll get more into Medeek a little bit later too, but Nathaniel Medeek has a very deep collection of extensions for creating. He has a foundation extension, a truss extension, a wall extension, and again, I'll demo these a little bit more later on. I don't want to double up on them. But if you want something that's going to automate the creation of framing in your model, you can add like doors that move inside of framed assemblies, other things like that. So very, very detailed collection of extensions. Sorry, here's the trusses. And then kind of a wall example too. So it'll automatically adjust the framing and things like that. I think a lot of the time he almost has too much detail in there for what you can pick. Like he's literally got like pages and pages of, you know, do you want your framing to be this? Do you want this to be this? Do you want this to be this? And I'm like, sure. That sounds great. So TIG Roof is a free extension from TIG that's basically designed to create different kinds of roofs. So like for example, I can pick this roof, add a hipped roof, pick a mansard roof, adjust different options in there. So it'll automatically generate roofs. It's a little bit limited in the kinds of roofs that it can create, but if you're trying to do something fast and you don't want to mess around with slopes and all of that, it's a great place to start, and it's free. Vali Architect's Instant Roof is a very good tool for that as well. He's got a lot more roof types in there. I will say most of the people I talk to in the end start figuring out how to create their own roofs, because I don't think there's a ton of extensions that quite get things exactly where things need to be. Would you generally agree? Yeah.
I'm actually going to do a tutorial on this later today as well.
Perfect. moving on. Dude, you are awesome. Okay, so Lattice Maker is a TIG extension. Absolutely love Lattice Maker. Basically what it does is it's a tool that will take a surface. So say I was to select all of these. It will offset the faces in, like by a certain thickness. It'll add a glass pane. So it's very good for quickly creating like commercial style windows. I use this all the time. It kind of respects the geometry that's in here. So like for example, this, it's a curved face with 4 faces in there, right? So really you've got face, 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 face. So if you run Lattice Maker on this surface, like this, you're gonna end up with 4 windows. So you can kind of use the geometry to create windows in there, but super fast. If you need something fast, I use this all the time. Don't worry, he's gonna talk about dynamic components later too. So. Yep. All right, Flex Tools. Nobody in here has heard of Flex Tools, so. So Flex Tools is awesome. It's basically a collection of dynamic components and tools for working with dynamic components that are very adjustable. He's also got a really cool tool for component finding, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But basically, you just bring these in, and they'll sit on a surface, and you can align them, you can adjust them, you can scale them. He's got an awesome wall cutter tool in here for cutting openings. Yanni, we'll see if I set this up right. I didn't. But there we go. It'll do that automatically too, but you can use it to basically cut the openings in here. The cool thing about the wall cutter is you can set multiple faces to cut. So if you've got like, you know, brick and then another wall behind it and all of that, you can set a certain number of faces, and you can actually use this to move these around. But it's also got, he's got fencing in here, and again, you can right click on these and you can adjust them, and these are probably older, but you can adjust the opening width, the opening height. These are all 100% dynamic. So you can just adjust this. You can adjust sills, sashes, all that different stuff. So super fast. I actually really like how you can just scale it and then it'll regenerate in there. So saves a ton of time. Got it. Okay, so if you've ever created surfaces using the From Contours tool in SketchUp, they usually look kind of like this, which is fine. They're pretty accurate from that standpoint. It's basically using triangulation from all of the different points in here to create your surfaces. So Fredo 6 has a tool called Topo Shaper. And basically what it does is instead of using triangulation, it uses a grid. So you pick your surface, and then what it does is it uses a quad grid to create your topology instead of tris. And so what that means is when you generate that terrain in here, it's a lot more editable because of the quad nature of things. It works really good with like a Vertex Tools or something like that, but it creates a much cleaner mesh. So it looks a lot better as opposed to this situation right here. So if you want cleaner meshes from your terrains, that's a good place to do that. Edge Tools is a free tool from TomTom. So if you work with CAD files or anything like this, and I'll show you a little bit more about this one a little bit later, but basically Edge Tools is a tool set for simplifying and fixing errors. So this one, for example, will allow you to inspect and close edge gaps. So it'll find gaps in here, and you can set the tolerance on that, like how wide it looks. So, you know, find me all the gaps that are less than 6 inches or more than 10, you know, whatever. You can set that in here, and then you can find them, and it'll automatically fix most of them. Not all of them, but most of them. It also has tools in here for simplification of curves, which I'll show you a little bit later. Sandbox Tools is technically an extension. If you've ever tried to do any kind of terrain work in the online version, you know that you really wish there were extensions in the online version because you can't use Sandbox Tools. But it's basically a tool set built into SketchUp for working with terrains. It's got really cool functions like the stamp function, which lets you take a surface, stamp it into a terrain. It's also got the drape function, which we'll get into a little bit later. But you can drape edges on 3D terrain, things like that. Talked a little bit about Placemaker, but if you need to pull in context imagery, you should definitely do that. One thing about Placemaker, and I guess SketchUp kind of has this functionality too, it does give you access to being able to purchase near map data of locations. So if you need high resolution images, like, and this is probably old, so it's probably gotten some better, but this is a high resolution near map image that I pulled in of a location. You can see how just the level of detail for that image is significantly higher. I'd be a little bit careful with doing a ton of this just because the heaviness of using the high resolution textures can really slow SketchUp down, but still a super cool tool. And they just now got access to being able to bring in that Google Earth data, which, you know, from afar looks good. Don't zoom in too close because it starts looking less good, but it's still a good resource to have if you're just trying to do like quick context or something like that. Okay, let's take a break.
Cool, man.
Yeah.
Thanks, Justin, for an eye-opening presentation on the infinite possibilities available beyond SketchUp's default tools. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any of the recordings from the 2024 SketchUp 3D Summit. Want to experience the 3D magic in person? Mark your calendar for June 11th to the 13th, 2025. And join us in Denver for the next SketchUp 3D Summit. You'll get to see Justin live along with more than a dozen other SketchUp experts presenting on design and documentation, AI innovations, and workflow automation. Visit SketchUp3dSummit.com to learn more. Sign up early and you can keep a few extra shekels in your pocket. I'll see you there. Or check out our latest upload here. It's a beauty, I just know it. Keep at it. I'll catch you next time.